because I'm doing a horrible job explaining this book. It's so hard to explain. I'm just gonna say it right at the bat. So I did not finish this book. This is Ruined by Sarah Vaughn. Sarah Vaughn is a writer I really like. I really like her Sleepless. Her Sleepless book, so you know what? It's the best way to do it is to compare Sleepless to this, because both these books are romance romance graphic novels that take place in the past. It's a period piece. And Sleepless has a nice little, has more going on with it than just, oh, it's a romance, slash fantasy too. But it's more than just the characters are talking about, like, oh, these, like, about, like, this and that. There's more going on, so there's not just conversations, it's also the story that's going on, and also, like, there's a lot more conflict, and it keeps your interest throughout. Honestly, it's 11 issues, and I wish, and I think they could have gone for, I don't know why I hate saying I wish, it just sounds so, like, lame, but it would have been so nice if it went on for, I would not have minded one bit if it went on for 25 issues. Because it was just so damn interesting. I wanted to know more about that world. Ruined, I didn't even finish. Now, it's well written enough. If it didn't keep my interest, that little itty bitty sliver, which I think is that's due to how Sarah Vaughn writes this book, thankfully, I would have dropped this book a lot sooner. But the way she writes, she tries her best to, it's like someone who's not, like someone like me who's into romance but is kind of particular about it, even to this day. She tries her best to be like, hey, you liked this kind of romance tale, we're telling this story, this kind of story, but in the past, and we're going to tell it in a slower kind of way, in a different kind of way than you used to. And it was kind of, honestly, it was like a graphic novel adaptation of a Shakespeare play, in all the worst ways. All that kind of dry kind of dialogue, it's just boring, and it's just talking, but it's, and I don't mind that, but it's just so dry the way they do it. It's just kind of, it's already uninteresting to what they're talking about, but do it in such an uninteresting way that it's boring. Like, it's, like, this is the book, this is the example of when people say, wow, you like romance? Like, I'm surprised you like romance. This is what I think of romance. Like, it's kind of like, the stereotypical romance that people think of when they think of romance. I don't want to see this romance because it's just going to be like this, isn't it? Like, that's kind of what I'm trying to get across. And the main comparison I make is to Bridgerton. And if I don't even want to watch a Bridgerton TV show, why would I want to watch what basically compare? I'm saying, because this is what they're saying on Goodreads. The reviewers are saying that that's the main comparison to make. So, what basically is a spiritual graphic novel adaptation of the Bridgerton TV series. Obviously not, its main comparison making is the everything's the comparisons. You know what I mean. You guys know what I'm talking about. I don't have to go into detail. Scott Pilgrim Volume 6, my favorite volume of Scott Pilgrim. It has everything I love about this series all wrapped into one nice little package. If you're not read this book, read it immediately. And honestly, overall, like, this is 250 pages, and it took me an hour to read. Officially, that is a new world record. Actually, it was more like, because there's a lot of extras. So, no, it was 250. It was actually 250. And there's a lot of, like, but still, 250 pages, officially a world record for me. And a lot of it was due because it was very fast-paced, a lot of splash page panels, which there was not a whole lot of dialogue. I think it still had enough dialogue. It still wasn't like it was, I wouldn't call it a silent comic at all. No, it definitely had its fair share of dialogue. But this was the kind of, like, the climax of the entire Scott Pilgrim saga. So obviously it's gonna have a lot more, like, action, and, you know, it's not gonna have as many slower moments, and, like, you know. But Scott Pilgrim is the perfect example of, they could just have the two characters talking and it's still interesting, because Brian Lee O'Malley knows how to keep your interest. He knows how it's the writing style, the way that the characters talk, the way that they're written, the dialogue is written, everything is pulled up to everything is brought to the, what do you say, like, that, honestly, I think it's not Sleepless. Ruined has completely ruined my brain, like mush. And I have to, like, 3 cuts this video too. The first cut I could have uploaded this is 28 minutes, so it's going over 8 books. It should not have taken 28 minutes to do that. Captain Marvel Volume 3. It was technically one more of this, but overall, this is still my favorite. This is my favorite volume of the series so far. I think it will be my favorite series of the series overall. Now this is a good example of this is the Captain Marvel we should get nowadays. And this is if we had this Captain Marvel in the movies, she would be received a lot better than she is today. Because this is the Captain Marvel that the defenders of Captain Marvel are saying the characters actually like in the movies, but isn't. This is the culprit as to why people actually like Captain Marvel, even the version that we have today. Because Kelly Sue DeConnick tried her best to write her an interesting version of Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and succeeded. This is honestly like probably my favorite Captain Marvel. And yes, it is my favorite Captain Marvel book, but this is probably one of my favorite surprises. But one of the biggest, no, not my favorite. One of the biggest surprises that I've come across. And this is my second time reading it too. But again, like with Scott Pilgrim, it was so long, it might as well be my first time. Avengers World, and I read this, last time I reviewed this, I was in the same exact area. So I'm not usually in the basement, but I always go in the basement if it's too late, and because I can talk louder, and talk normal voice. But Avengers World, every 6 months, this is a good example of an every 6 month book. Every 6 months, I'm going to check this out in my library, because it's that good. And this is one that you could read, like, as long as you don't ask yourself too many questions, because there is one issue here that is a tie-in to the Axis event, but unlike even the Captain Marvel book, they have it previously on, it catches you up, and the next issue is not more tie-ins to Axis. Now, with Captain Marvel, at the end of that issue, they said to be continued in an issue that's not collected in this trade here. But I didn't mind it. It was Black Vortex. I kind of, even though it's been so long since I've read the Black Vortex, I remember enough from it. It was like, okay, I know what happens here. And unlike in Guardians of the Galaxy and X-Men, they kind of, honestly, they could have not collected that issue here, and we've been none the wiser. Like, it's kind of like this issue starts here, and then it takes a break with Black Vortex, and then we continue where that previous issue left off of, before Black Vortex tie-in issue. Same here too. Avengers World overall, like that was honestly, it sums up a lot of what I like about like kind of that the underrated Marvel kind of bargaining book kind of thing, where yeah, it's obviously not going to be as grandiose as the other Avengers titles are going on at the time, but if you want something that was more grounded, you want something that was more like easy to obtain, easy to read, you didn't have to read so many freaking tie-ins, that was the perfect place to go. And if you weren't expecting like super good storytelling, it's still like an 8 out of 10 book for me, but it's kind of like a bargain. It's like kind of just have that bargain book feeling to it, to where you like going on the other Hickman books, you don't really have to read Avengers World. It's kind of like a spin-off for readers to just watch the movies and want something to read that's not going to take up too much of time. I don't have to read like a whole bunch of other Avengers books. Both you gotta do, but you know what I mean. Pure David, Symbiote Spider-Man. This is my favorite era of Spider-Man, so I already have a huge bias, but it's a damn good era of Spider-Man. Like that was when they were trying to make Spider-Man like more interesting. They weren't trying to. They weren't trying something different, and they succeeded with this because it was this. So this is a throwback. Those you don't know, this did come out in 2019. It's supposed to take place back in the 80s, late 80s, when Spider-Man was first infected with that symbiote suit that he found in Battle World Secret Wars. Those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's Venom symbiote. Before Eddie Brock became Venom, Spider-Man became Venom. But it wasn't called Venom until much later, but symbiote is what they called it for the longest time. And that was my favorite Spider-Man issues. When I was reading those way back a few years ago, that was like a page turner, and that's never happened to me with an 80s book. Usually I'll read one issue of it and be like, okay, I'm done. Let's read something that's a bit more faster paced. Because even in the 80s, they didn't have that like It was still very much. It was because it was so long ago. The pacing was still drastically different. Not as drastically different as it was in the Silver Age, but enough so to where it was noticeably so still. But with those issues of Spider-Man, it was just as fast-paced as a modern issue of Spider-Man. And by modern, I mean like 2000s and on, like 2010 onward, but not like. When I say modern, a lot of people are like, "Oh, that modern." No, I'm talking modern as in general. But this, already being my favorite era of Spider-Man, had a lot of some pretty big shoes to fill, and it filled them in completely. This was a fantastic read. It's still like, it's not as, it probably won't stick in my mind as much as the symbiote, as much as the actual symbiote storyline goes, but this is a nice treat for anyone who wants more symbiote Spider-Man, but doesn't want them to do that in an actual modern Spider-Man issue, but wants a throwback issue. This gives you everything that you want. And it's surely because it's written by Peter David. Batman Year One is important. So, number one thing I want to say is the most important Batman book next to Dark Knight Returns. This and Dark Knight Returns are the reason why we have the Batman we have today. Responsible for the Batman we have today, and I thank those comics for them, but judging them as the comics themselves, they are kind of dated, but still enjoyable enough. Like, I'm glad I have these in my collection. I still read these again. I'll still read these again and again as time goes on. Not in 6 months, though. Probably in about a year or so. Hellboy Volume 2. Like Volume 1 is still pretty damn slow, but this one has a lot more fast pace. It reminded me of what I liked about Hellboy, but still, like, forgot how slow these first 2 volumes were. Cosmic Detective knows what it wants to be. So it knows that the artist, David Rubin, is a damn good artist, so they give him a lot of room to have his artwork stand out, because they have a lot of splash page panels, a lot of, and I have to get what I mean by splash page panels. Of course I can. I did it part before. Come on, you have a lot of them. Come on, guys. This is what I mean. Like, just no dialogue, and I had a lot of that, so it was very fast paced. 200 pages roughly took me like 2 hours to read, and that is, yes, I said with Scott Pilgrim that was 250, but this one, it was still like it's still very fast paced, regardless if it took an hour longer, but not being as long as Scott Pilgrim was. But it was still, because this had more dialogue, this had a lot more to like read than Scott Pilgrim did, surprisingly enough. But I will definitely be getting this book myself, so you will definitely see this in my collection pretty soon here, very soon here. The Mysteries is Bill Willingham, right? Watterson. I kept saying Willingham my first cut, but Bill Watterson of Calvin Hobbes fame. This book took me 20 minutes to read and is kind of forgettable, but it's Bill Watterson, so I still highly recommend it, of course, but still very forgettable. Like, it's so quick that it takes you just like no time at all to read, so it's kind of like in and out of your overall like memory bank. I don't know. Skip to the end. Very good, but kind of it's very hard to explain this. So basically, I'm not gonna explain it. What I'm trying to say is it kind of it reminded me of why I was so skeptical to get into independent books. It kind of had that independent book feel, for better and for worse. And I am sorry, but I can't explain what I mean by that. I hope you guys know what I mean by that, but I still really like it, because I have for better for worse. And for all the good, and just, I'm so like, but for better for worse, but because that's not what I'm trying to say, but I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, but basically what I'm trying to say is it had all the best and worst elements of what I like about independent books, but it was still an average book. It still wasn't like super good, but it was still enjoyable enough. It was very fast paced, so it wasn't, so 128 pages for like 80 pages, but it's nothing that I'd read again anytime soon. Like, it's just good enough, but it still kind of had the main drawback was it kind of had that feel to it that it's very hard to explain, but basically if you read enough independent books, you know that all independent books have that feel to it. And this, it's dialed up to 11. That was words I'm trying to look for. Dialed up to 11. This, it's dialed up to 11. And honestly, 5 years ago, I would have dropped this book after issue 1 probably. But I'm glad I've definitely like gotten better at knowing how these books gonna feel like. But overall, this isn't one I'm gonna have in my top 10 or anything like that. Like, not even in this year. Like, not even this month probably. But overall, I did like this book. I did think it was good, and I do recommend this book, especially for music lovers. I think music lovers are gonna love this book a lot more than I did. And I'm gonna do a little overall like summary. So I'm not gonna touch Ruin because that did not finish. Scott Pilgrim, 10 out of 10. Captain Marvel, 8.5 8 out of 10. Avengers World, 9 out of 10. Symbiote Spider-Man, 9 out of 10. Batman Year One, 8 out of 10. Very controversial, I know, but I'm judging it as a book. But I'm judging it as a book, not as what. I'm judging it as a book. I'm judging it as a book overall, not when it came out. Hellboy, I give like a 7 out of 10. Again, judging it as the volume itself, not as Hellboy overall. Cosmic Detective, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Maybe an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I'd say 8 out of 10 for Cosmic Detective. It was very fast paced too. Like, it was very fast paced. But it was kind of like it had that kind of it was enough to want me to. I think that honestly the more we think about it, the main complaints I have about Cosmic Detective are just we could have gotten more. I want more. So I think with the second volume we'll get more of what I want. Because now that we told that tale, we can get more into like the characters and this and that. So to where I won't have any problems with the series overall. So that's good. Yeah, at least that. That tells you I really enjoyed the book. I want a volume 2. And I'm willing to buy it myself too, with my own money. Mysteries, I give a 7.5 out of 10. And same to Skip to the End. Skip to the End, I give like a 7 out of 10. So Jeremy Holt also wrote Made in Korea. Made in Korea is leaps and bounds better.